Again, thank you very much for taking time out of our busy days to be here. We are, as you can see, from our typical focus of World War II, we are fast forwarding quite a bit. And today we're going to talk about current times, you know, and I kind of define that. We can go back 20 years to have advanced drones like we're going to hear about this morning in the forefront of news, especially from the military and defense department perspective. So yeah, a little bit different. We're going to have Rich talk about drones. So Rich Martindell got his commission through the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program from the University of Arizona. After pilot training, he flew the F4D on 232 combat missions in North and South Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. He then moved to Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany, where he sat 15-minute nuclear alert in the F4D there in Germany until the collapse of the Soviet Union and the reunification of Germany. He then transitioned to the F-15A model as a flight instructor at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. Okay, after another assignment or two, he went back to Bitburg Air Base in Germany, where he sat 5-minute air defense alert in Germany, again, before the collapse of the Soviet Union and the wall coming down. Okay, he then moved to Decimumanu Air Base in Italy, where he was the deputy commander of American operations there, alongside counterparts from Germany and Great Britain and Italy. After he retired, Rich worked as the chief pilot and test pilot for the F-15E model for the flight simulation program for several different aviation industry giants. Moving to San Diego, he immersed himself in general aviation, and that led to him being named the FAA 2016 Safety Team Representative of the Year. Okay, pretty nice. He then found an opportunity to work for General Atomics, flying the MQ-9 Reaper. And here we are today. So please help me welcome author, warbird pilot, and aviation safety consultant, Rich Martindell.
All right. Hey. All right, so Lip stole my first slide. So there you go. When I went to work for General Atomics, I knew I wanted to write the book, but I knew I couldn't write the book till I wasn't working for them anymore, if I wanted to be honest. So I was taking notes the whole time so that it was fresh in my mind and I could capture it at the time. But I didn't do it till after I got laid off, and I'll talk about that. But anyhow, what we talk about here today and what I talk about in the book is my training and learning to fly the airplane, and then my 4 deployments, getting there and being there, and what it was like doing that. MQ-1 started off as the RQ-1, so for everybody here pretty familiar with aircraft designations, obviously. F, it's a fighter, B, it's a bomber, R, it's reconnaissance. So it started off as a reconnaissance, Q is drone, so RQ-1, reconnaissance drone. Military said, that's great, but we want to make things go boom. What can we do about that? And they said, well, we'll hang 2 Hellfire missiles on it and you can blow things up. They said, that's great. So there you have the MQ-1 Predator. Rotax engine, 2,200 pound max gross weight, 70 to 90 knots, 24 hours endurance, so didn't want one guy doing it, ceiling 25,000 feet, and the missiles. But the Air Force, military, bigger is better. They said, okay, we'll give you the MQ-9. We'll put a turboprop on it, bump it up 5 times to a 10,000 pound gross airplane, cruise at 170, again 24 hours plus endurance, this time a ceiling of 50,000 feet, but we'll give you 4 Hellfires and 2 500-pound bombs, either laser guided or GPS guided. They said, oh, that's a lot better. So that's what you had. For recognizing the two, if the tail forms a V, it's an MQ-9. If it's an inverted V, it's an MQ-1. Okay, because not close together, they look very, very similar. Side by side, you can see the size difference immediately. But other than that, the tail is the best way to tell the difference. There were several training locations. I got selected to go to the one between Apple Valley and Lancaster. And I was happy for that because I could commute home on the weekends to San Diego. It was supposed to be a 3-month course, turned into a 6-month course because of asset availability and instructor availability. They had overfed the pipeline. There were too many of us students and not enough airplanes and instructors to get us all trained in a timely manner. That was okay. It was a good time, and it was essentially a type rating checkout. That's how thorough and intense it was. But in addition to learning to fly the airplane and learning about the airplane, you had to learn how to use the control van. So you had 2 learning processes going on at the same time. There are 2 qualifications to fly the drone. Everybody, when you first get there, you get checked out in the mission command element, which means you can fly the mission. You can't take off and land, but once they give you the airplane, you can go fly the mission. Okay. Then some people go ahead and get checked out as launch and recovery team, and they can take off and land plus fly the mission. So I had absolutely no desire to take off and land. All I wanted to do was go fly the mission. I told my boss that, and he says, fine, we can work with that. So I got checked out as a mission command element, and had a good time before doing that. What were they looking for? Pilots, they wanted a commercial instrument rating with 500 hours PIC, second-class medical, and the ability to get a secret clearance. I already had my second class because I was flying anyhow, and the interview went real fine. I was really impressed with the interview, as a matter of fact. I applied, got a phone call back, said, yeah, we'd like to talk to you in person. I went up, talked to him in person, walked in, talked to the HR person. She re-verified all my information, and then one of the supervisors came in to interview me for the job. And before he came in, I asked her, I said, when will you make a hiring decision? She said, today. And I was just flabbergasted. So he came in, interviewed me. He was happy with the interview. He said, she'll be back with your letter of offer, and you're on your way. And I said, that's great. For sensor operators, most of them came from military, or military sensor operators, but we also had them coming from University of North Dakota, Embry-Riddle, who had gone through drone training programs. For the guys coming out of the military, it was a big pay raise, and they appreciated that tremendously. But they also had to be able to get a second-class medical because they were a required crew member. Even though they didn't fly the airplane, they essentially were the co-pilot. When we were doing all the checklists and stuff, they read the checklist, verified everything that I did right, and helped me get to and from the target. Once we got in the target area, really the sensor became the driver. All I had to do is position the drone so that he or she could see what they were supposed to look at, and then they would do that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. They also had to obviously get a secret clearance. That was a bit of a problem. We all upgraded to top secret. The problem was the van is only cleared for secret, and the tasking element that we were dealing with was in a top secret facility. So they had information coming into them of what they wanted to do, but they couldn't tell us why they wanted us to do it. So there was a little bit of a gap in communication there. They'd say, go watch this target. And we'd say, why? We can't tell you. Well, okay, fine. But we go watch it and do that. So let's talk about the office a little bit. And I'll get over here and make sure am I still with you? All right, so got a pilot on the left seat, sensor operator on the right seat. The stations are identical, but they've got different software in them. So the pilot side has the pilot software, the sensor side has the sensor software. But if my side fails, you can instantly transition over to the other seat and fly the airplane just fine. All right, so looking out the nose camera, I've got a day TV and an IR camera. I can select whichever one I want, day or night operations. The sensor, same screen or same situation, you got a camera, but it's the ball camera. It can look anywhere, and again, it's got a day TV and a night IR. Okay. Up above is a moving map display. So I can program routes, I can see where I am, I can go do what I need to do. These two screens are basically the control panels. There is so much information there, it's absolutely ridiculous. But the engineers needed the information because obviously you don't have anybody on board the airplane, and they need to know scads of data, way more than a pilot even cares about. But all the flight control actuators are servos, electronic servos. I can tell you the temperature on every single one of them. I can tell you the temperature of the fuel in every fuel tank. I can tell you how much fuel there is in every fuel tank. I can tell you information that you don't need to know. But there it is, and I had to be able to get to it. All right. Over on this side, you can see you got 4 black squares here. Most of our communications was done in a chat room rather than on the radio. The only time I talked on the radio is when I was talking to air traffic control or somebody directly below me on the ground. Other than that, I would have 4 to 6 chat rooms open, and you think of a chat room as a radio frequency. So on one frequency, on one chat room, I had my airspace coordinator. On another chat room, I had my tasker. On another chat room, I had my screener, because all my video was live fed to whoever needed to see it. And I mean, it could go to the White House if it needed to. And one time it did. But the screener was the one that knew what we were looking for and what had to be done. So he or she would communicate with us in the chat room, tell us where to look with the ball, and keep an eye out for whatever it is we're looking for. This radio right here was the most cosmic radio I have ever seen. I could talk to anybody. Ship to shore, ship to ship, UHF air, VHF air, Army FM, just dial it up and there they were. So again, most of the time on the radio I was talking to air traffic control, but occasionally, and I'll talk to you about one time I was talking to ground troops, and just the thing just incredible. We had 2 telephones. This one was the unclassified telephone, and the one on my left was the classified telephone. So we could get, if we needed to, on the phone and talk to somebody rather than using the chat room. All right, so information overload, but when we get to the target area, instead of looking out the nose camera, the sensor would duplicate his screen on my screen, so we're both eyes on the target. But when we're eyes on the target, I still had the HUD on my screen, so I knew what the airplane was doing. I could monitor the engine instruments, and I could monitor its position. Dedicated weather, needed dedicated weather all the time. I could call up a weatherman on one of my chat rooms and ask what's going on. I'll show you why that was important here a little bit later. All right, so my first deployment was to Al-Assad, Iraq. The neat thing about working for General Atomics is once you get checked out, you could live anywhere you wanted to. And when it was time to deploy, your travel coordinator would call you up and say, "You're going here, how do you want to get there?" "I want to leave from San Diego." She said, "Fine." So she gets me airline tickets from San Diego First of all, to London. That's an overnight flight, so that's my first night on the road. Next morning in London, change airplanes and fly to Vienna. Spend the night in Vienna because now I'm really shot. Then change airlines to Austrian Air, and fly from Vienna to Erbil, Iraq, which is the only commercial airport serving commercial airlines in Iraq at the time. And Vienna Air was the only airline doing it. Spend the night in Erbil, and then take a military charter down to Al-Assad. So it was a 3-day trip to get there. It was not, other than the fact they did a great job. I mean, great hotels, great coordination, great everything. It just a hard trip. Okay, so in Al-Assad, the little red dot in the middle there, halfway between Baghdad and Syria, our operating area was all of Iraq and most of Syria, usually the western part of Syria. If we wanted to go into the eastern part, my U.S. airspace coordinator had to coordinate with the Russian airspace coordinator to let them know I was going to be there and make sure everybody was happy with it. Most of my missions were flown on the highway between Damascus and Baghdad, which was the supply line for all the ISIS operations going on there. But we also did overflights in Baghdad to watch convoys, and all the way down into Basra. So we had the whole area to operate in. The nice thing about being there was the military owned the airspace, basically. So when you took off, you talked to departure control. You said, I want to go this direction and climb to a certain altitude. And they'd say, okay, fine, you climb to your altitude. And then they'd hand you off to the military airspace coordinator, and he or she would assign you an altitude and an area to operate in for the target that you had been assigned. And if you wanted to move out of that airspace, you had to re-coordinate it. The airspace was usually about 10 by 10 miles. Okay? So it took a lot of coordination to get us, and in one particular area along the highway between Syria and Iraq, in order to change altitudes, you had to go out of the operating area, change your altitude, and go back in because you had drones stacked every 500 feet. That's how much traffic was going on over there. Okay, it was called Operation Inherent Resolve. There are over 60 countries involved, and a lot of them are right there at Al-Assad where I was. We flew from Erbil to Al-Assad in a Beech 1900. You can see the wingtip there. There's the air base, and 2 main runways. The outer runway was useless. We did all our operations off the main runway closest to the base, and the base is then to the north of the runways. Here's a better look at it from a satellite view. That's the Euphrates River. I mean, you got to get some neat geography doing this and see some neat places. We were confined to the base, because civilians were confined to the base because it was just too dangerous to go off. Anytime anybody went off base, or they said outside the wire, they were full battle uniform. Armor plates, helmets, the whole bit. So we stayed on base the whole time. You got a little confining, but there you go. You get to the base, your boss picks you up on the ramp and takes you to billeting. Everything looks like this. Everything's got the T-wall, concrete, blast deflectors. So you got to have a name on it so you know what thing you're coming up to. So here's the billeting office. You go into the billeting office, you get your room. There are not a thousand, but several hundred blocks like this that got 30 trailers inside of them. You got to find the right block and the right trailer for your room. The white trailers we're going to talk about in a minute, and then the sandbags on the bomb shelter there in case you got rocket attacked. You get inside the block, and this is what all the rooms look like. It's a good thing it's a Muslim country, because if you're coming home drunk, you'd have a hard time finding the right one. You get there, you go into your room, you share a room, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but your shift is 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week. So your roommate is on the other shift. So you got the room to yourself while you're off, and then the only time you see each other is when you're swapping out. That's my side of the room. I didn't take a picture of the other side of the room, but it looked like a hurricane hit it. This guy was a slob. And so it's fortunate that we didn't room together all the time. All right, the white trailers. You got 3 white trailers out there. The first one is the latrine trailer, which is bottom right. The little lavatory rooms are smaller than any aircraft lab I've ever been in. You close the door, it bangs your knees. Your knees are in your face. But there you go. Then the next one over is the shower room. In the showers, you got about enough room to get wet like that. And but it works, so there you go. Well, that's for the men. The third one is for the females. And it's got a cipher lock on it, and only the girls know the combo for the cipher lock. Okay? Transient quarters, not quite as nice. They get a tent. Green Beans is a military clone of Starbucks. You go inside, it looks like the Starbucks menu. They got lattes, they got hot pastries, trying to make you feel a little bit at home. But again, you're confined to base, so other than that, you're going to eat in the mess hall. Period. Dot. Okay. I want you to remember this is the BX/commissary facility, basically a 7-Eleven on steroids. It's got all kinds of snacks, but it does have a clothing department for basic underwear, some shoes if you need a new pair of shoes, souvenir sweatshirts and t-shirts, real small electronics shop, really big GNC section for all the weightlifters, because base security was Marines and Army, and then our interior security for the flight line was Air Force. And you had a lot of guys and gals that liked to. Top right is the post office. Bottom right is, again, the exterior of the exchange. But again, keep that picture in mind because we're going to see another one at another location that's not quite the same. Had a really large MWR area. You watch military TV, a whole bank of computers so you could go in there, get online, check your email, do Netflix, whatever you wanted to do. A lot of us didn't use that because there was a Wi-Fi, commercial Wi-Fi facility. It only cost $150 a month, and it was worth it. Because now in my quarters I could get online, and at work I could get online. I mentioned that we worked 12 on, 12 off. My shift was 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning, which I happened to like because that's when everybody back home was awake. So I could communicate with the family and that sort of stuff. Here's the gym. And again, it was huge, lots of machines, and lots of guys and gals working out all the time. Okay, so as I mentioned, it was 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week. Shift change at 4 and 4. Of the 12 hours that you're on duty, you'll be in the box a maximum of 6. For every airplane we had airborne, we had 2 crews. So you could swap in and out. And in this particular case, we're co-located with the aircraft. So our launch and recovery crew and our mission element crew were all co-located. So the launch and recovery guys would take the airplane off. They'd fly it for a couple hours heading for the target area. Sometimes the target area was 6 hours away. And then we'd start swapping out. And then when the airplane came home, somewhere on the recovery leg, the recovery team would come in, take over the airplane, bring it back in and land it. You were there for 3 months, again, 7 days a week. And actually the pace was actually pretty slow, surprisingly. I had to work to slow down for it, but yeah, I get there. Left picture is the ready room. I'll show you that in a minute. The base was so big, they had 4 bus routes to get around the base. I used it occasionally, but most of the times I walked. But since the bus drivers were local nationals, they couldn't go on the flight line. So there were gates to get onto the flight, personnel gates to get onto the flight line, lower right side, basically 2 concrete slabs with a door in between and then concertina wire on either side. And for those of you that are parents and grandparents, we call that Narnia Gate. If you know The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that was Narnia Gate, and that's how we got to work if you took the bus. There's a drone coming out of the hangar. Again, top right is the ready room. Same thing with the ready room desks. There was enough desks for half of us because we swapped desks just like we swapped rooms with the shift change. Lower right, the bigger tent in the back that looks like a clamshell is the maintenance tent. The one that looks like a Quonset hut is the ops ready room. Getting ready to launch. And again, this airplane was absolutely incredible as far as reliability is concerned. It would fly for 18 hours, come back, land, and 8 hours later it'd be back up in the air. So at Al-Assad, we usually had 3 aircraft airborne, so we had double that number of crews in the ready room all the time. But that's what, when you were off, that's when you had time to go get your meals and do that. So my normal day, I would go to work, I would walk to work at 4 in the afternoon, get checked in. If I wasn't on the first set of people to fly, I would then walk to the mess hall, get dinner, walk back, jump in, start doing my share, rotating on and off, and then get off at 4 in the morning, go back, jump in bed, wake up in time for lunch, and go have lunch, and it was time to go back to work. So it just, I'll talk about that a little bit more. It seems like a tough schedule, but there are tougher schedules. Okay, the next deployment was to Niger, Africa. And again, taking off out of San Diego, I think I went up to Los Angeles. From Los Angeles, fly to Paris, spend the night in Paris. Don't get to see Paris, but you spend the night in Paris. And then catch the airplane from Paris to Niamey. Remembering that most of Africa prior to that was French colonies. So Air France, guess what, they fly in there. That's how we get down there. What's interesting is, you can see Niamey, which is the capital of Niger. Down to the right of it is the airport. Our operating area was all of, let me point it out to you, all of Niger, all of Mali, and I could be over here, be 1,000 miles away from my home base. We did have excursions into some other neighboring countries. Is the best way to put it. All right. Interesting thing about the base. Single runway, no parallel taxiway, military ops up on the north side, international terminal on the south side. You're mixing international commercial flights with drones, and they don't have any trouble doing it. And the FAA can't handle it. I don't understand. Again, the blue dot is our administrative housing area. Far right is the military operating area, and then you taxi down to the runway, and usually you're taking off to the west, so you have to taxi down the runway, turn around, and take off. And again, airspace coordination is not a big problem. Other than talking to tower to get going, you talk to your airspace coordinator, tell him or her where you're going, what airspace you wanted. They would clear that with the civilians, and then you just go do your thing. Housing was a little bit different. That's my tent. I should say that's our tent. There's 8 guys in there, okay? But because it's a 24/7 operation, unlike the trailers where you could have your crews segregated, every tent was a 24-hour-day sleep room. So every tent was dark, and you needed a flashlight to get to your room. There's 8 rooms in there. They're divided by plywood, And the plywood only goes up so high, so if you turn your light on, the guy next to you is getting some light as well. Top picture is what my room looked like when I got there. I got a bed and nothing else. I built the shelf to have there, and then I built another shelf that you can't see where I put clothes and stuff. But that became my home for 3 months. Remember the exchange I showed you earlier? That's the exchange in Africa. A 20 by 20 foot room, open 3 days a week for 2 hours a day. The one in Al-Assad, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, piece of cake. Bottom picture is the MWR room. Got a pool table that you can't see and a ping pong table you can't see, but other than that, that's all there is. The ready room, just a little bit smaller, but we only had two airplanes airborne at a time, okay? And again, airspace coordination, not a big deal. You just took off, went where you wanted to go, just told people where you're going, what you were doing. Our big problem in Africa was weather. And unlike here, where the storms move west to east, they move east to west. So this blue dot is us, and this storm is coming at us. If I'm airborne, I can't get home. I can't land anywhere but where I took off from, because that's the only place I got the control van. The control van launches and recovers on a line of sight C-band frequency. As soon as you get airborne, you transition to satellite, okay? So I can only come home to the same place I took off from. The bottom picture shows that storm starting to move through. That's the Habub dust storm, and you can see why you can't land in that. But not only did I have to watch the weather at home, I had to watch the weather in the target area. And if I'm 1,000 miles to the east, to the west of there, and that storm gets between me and the base, I can't get home, because the drone does not like ice or hail or thermals or turbulence, because it's a very, I mean, it's a good flying airplane, but it doesn't take G's well. So a lot of coordination with the weather guys to make sure you didn't get trapped out. I had to cheat sometimes and go into a country I wasn't supposed to be in to get home. But the good news about this location is you could get off base. Okay, you could go downtown, you could eat, you could do some entertainment. So we got to do some fun stuff. The top right picture is a French restaurant we used to like to go to. That was our favorite restaurant. Bottom right is an outdoor one. The thing that's interesting about these restaurants is they're all fenced, and I'm not talking wood. I'm talking cement. And I'm talking an armed guard at the door. It was not exactly a friendly area, but it was better than Iraq. Our mission in Africa was, I talked about the two missions. In Iraq, we could monitor targets and watch people come and go from command post nodes and follow people, or we could monitor a target that was going to be struck with a bomb. And again, as a civilian, Geneva Convention precludes me from having anything to do with the targeting process. I can't say where to look, I can't say where to go, I can't say it's safe. I just have to point the camera where they tell us, and somebody in the military makes those decisions. But I can sit there and I can watch a target, and they can look at it and say, okay, there's no collateral damage, there's nobody there that we don't want to hurt. It's clear to bomb it. I watch it blow up, and then I get the BDA and look at the damage so that they can assess the effectiveness of the strike. In Africa, we're looking for training sites for Boko Haram, ISIS, anybody bad you can think of. They like Mali and Niger because of the remoteness. And as you well know, Boko Haram had all their kidnapped people somewhere in there, and so we were looking for the safe houses that had the hostages. So that was our mission there. But that was the one time I did talk to a French captain on the ground with his forces. There are a lot of French in the area. At the base, in addition to our drones, the French had MQ-9s with weapons, and they had Mirage 2000s and a tanker. So they were busy doing stuff in that area. Next trip was to Poland, and that was of great interest to me because that used to be the bad guys. That was behind the Iron Curtain, and so I was really eager to see that and get a feel for that. Turns out the Poles love us. They just welcome us with open arms. To get there, again, overnight into Frankfurt, then from Frankfurt fly to Berlin, and then from Berlin it's a 3-hour drive to Miroslavich, which is right here in the northwest portion of Poland. Now, I was particularly interested to cross the border because I wanted to see what the border was like. The border was nothing. And I got to thinking about it. Back in the Cold War days, Poland was basically part of Russia, so you didn't need a border. And now Poland is part of the EU, so you don't need a border. And so there was nothing there. Interesting disappointment. But educational for sure. Okay, the base, you can see the runway up there, the town down there. The housing area is halfway in between. And this is an old Russian Air Force base, so we're in the Russian dormitories. And they look like that. So it's a 5-story building. We're on the 4th floor. Guess how many elevators they have? Yeah, none. It's kind of like Big Bang Theory, going up and down the stairs, getting in and out of your room. The interesting thing here is, again, we had weather as a problem. I got there in November and stayed till just after New Year's. Sometimes I could not see that far building because of the fog. Okay, so we had the same issue with weather there as we did in different weather, but a weather issue. Our operating area, we're here in the northwest corner, but we could go up to the Baltic Sea, to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or we could come this way between, right through here, up landwise, or we could go all the way down to the Black Sea and take a look at Crimea before the Russians invaded Crimea, or invaded the rest of the country, Ukraine. We flew from Poland down to the border with Ukraine, through the Ukraine, into the Black Sea. The neat thing about the drone was not only was it a visual reconnaissance platform, it was an electronics reconnaissance platform. We had sensors that were soaking up electrons all the time. And the only problem with that was I couldn't see what was happening because all the electrons got soaked up and immediately downlinked to our analysis people on the ground. I just knew it was happening. I had no idea what they were collecting. But they could see radars, they could hear comms, they could pick up a lot of stuff. So flying along the border of Poland and Belarus and along the Crimea, we were picking up, even though sometimes it was an undercast and we couldn't see the ground, we were still picking up a lot of information. And again, when I was down in the Black Sea, I was 6 hours from home. And the tasking was, down in the Black Sea, it wasn't a timing issue, it was simply, we want you to fly till you don't have enough gas to fly anymore. So I had to monitor my fuel to make sure I could get home 6 hours later, minimum fuel. And they wanted me to land minimum fuel every time. So again, coordinating with the weather guy. I was halfway to the Black Sea one night, and the weather guy comes running into the van and says, turn around, come home, the weather's getting ready to crap. So turn around and go home. That's the kind of activity. This is the kind of activity that was going on before the invasion. None of those tracks are an MQ-9 track. You can see here they're Swedish RC-12s, RC-135s, RQ-4, which is the Northrop drone. But they were flying all along underneath Belarus, over to Russia, and down, plus into the Black Sea as well. And that was going on every day. And a little bit of geography I never knew about. Russia, Belarus is a Russian surrogate, if you will. Kaliningrad is a little country right here, part of Russia. So you can't go there, but boy, we could fly right along the border and pick up information off of them. They had one base there that we could see when we were looking. I could count MiG-29s on the ramp, and it was again just a really fun activity. Next trip was to Yuma, flying with the Marines, but the airplanes were in the Middle East. So let me back up and talk about airspace again. This time, flying in Poland, every time we flew, we filed an international flight plan. We were talking to air traffic control the whole time we were flying around up there, and they were pointing us out to traffic, and they were pointing traffic out to us. And let me back up. Along the border between Belarus and Poland and Kaliningrad, they had designated restricted areas. And we would call up and say, I want this restricted area at this altitude. And they'd say, you got it. And then they would keep the airliners out of our altitude or out of our airspace. So we would take off, we would fly an honest-to-God standard instrument departure, get on our route and start flying around, come home, fly an honest-to-God instrument recovery procedure. So, okay, so get to the Middle East. Again, I'm in Yuma. Our launch crews are here on the west coast of the Persian Gulf. They take the airplane off. As soon as they get gear up, they go satellite. Actually, they don't go satellite. I grab it from them on the satellite. And again, on an international flight plan, I fly a standard instrument departure until I'm 12 miles offshore. And I cancel IFR, and then I'm VFR. And I've got a route that normally fly down the coast, through the Strait of Hormuz, into the Gulf of Oman, sometimes all the way over to Pakistan, sometimes down the eastern coast of Africa, back up along the coast of Iran, and then back down. And this time, it's like an airline. I had a scheduled takeoff time and a scheduled land time, same time every day. And it was much nicer being able to operate like that. Again, we could see some of their air bases as we patrolled up and down the coastline of Iran. But also what we're doing is soaking up electrons, figuring out what was going on there. I did have one instance where we flew top cover on a tanker ship that had been hit by an Iranian missile. And we flew cover over that to make sure there weren't any pirates coming to try to board it. There was a U.S. aircraft carrier in the vicinity. They deployed a SEAL team of EODs to look at the ship. So I'm on the frequency monitoring the helicopter transfer. I mean, the airplane is just totally incredible. So let's talk about one thing we always give drone pilots crap about. How in the hell do you get PTSD if you're not going to get shot down? And the answer is, unlike Southeast Asia, where when I dropped a bomb, I could see the bomb go off, but I had no clue the damage until the FAC gave us our BDA. And 9 times out of 10, the BDA was RNO, smoke and foliage. That stands for results not observed, smoke and foliage. Very rarely did you get an actual assessment of what you did. You couldn't see what you did. The guys and gals that drop weapons off of this thing, in order to drop one, they will monitor their target for days, maybe weeks, establishing a pattern of life. And they'll watch that person interact with their family, come and go from the grocery store, daily life. It's things you and I do every day. And then one day, they catch him away from everybody else and blow him away. and they watch it because they are watching a figure on their scope, and they watch the missile hit, and they're gone, okay? Sometimes you have a little collateral damage, but the Hellfire is a very, very directed charge that just takes out a very little area, but you can have some collateral damage and watch people squirm before they die. That's not pleasant. If you're a military guy or gal, most of your flying is done from someplace like Nellis in Las Vegas, actually Creech in Las Vegas, or Holloman in New Mexico. I talked to the wing commander at Creech. He said it's absolutely surreal to get up in the morning, have breakfast with mom and the kids, send the kids off to school, drive into base, jump into the van, you're in the war zone killing people. And then you go home and you can't talk about it. Unlike us, when we were deployed, we could talk about each other, talk to each other, and decompress and all that. You can't decompress with your family. You got to keep it in. On top of that, I said I was doing 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week. I only did it for 3 months. Then I went home and took a break. These people are running 24/7 ops on 8-hour shifts. So somebody's on the day shift, somebody's on the night shift, and somebody's on the swing shift. And then just to be fair and screw everybody over equally, we're going to rotate you one for a while. Then we're going to rotate you another one for a while. Okay? So your body clock just gets screwed up tremendously, and that's how you get your PTSD. It is not uncommon for them to have problems, and I understand it completely. I thought it was a crime to take somebody straight out of pilot training and make them a drone pilot. Fortunately, the Air Force has changed it now, and before you ever go to training, you're going to drone pilot school instead of airplane pilot school, which is way better. But still, it's an interesting job, and it's a tough road to hoe, and they do it all the time. So with that, I'll take questions till Lips grabs me.
Before I come around and ask for questions, really happy to see Sean and the cadets here, so some young people, a couple other young people. I'd like to know how many of you have never heard of the Iron Curtain?
That's great.
That's good. Okay, good. I'm surprised. So, a question, please, for Rich. And be patient with me. I'd like to come around and give you the microphone so we can get it. We can capture it.
During your job, how many of them were actually shot down by the enemy?
There haven't been that many shot down. We got, I don't know if you saw the video of the one that got rammed by the MiG, but there was one in the Black Sea, the MiG pilot was trying to dust him off. He screwed up and hit him, and that put that drone out of commission. But there are no defenses. There's no raw gear. You can't tell if anybody's looking at you. You can't tell if anybody's shooting at you. All of a sudden your screen goes blank and you go, I wonder what happened. And then either, actually call it lost link, because you have uplinks from the satellite, from the ground to the satellite to the drone, and then you have the drone talking to the satellite talking to us. And occasionally that link breaks down and your screen will go blank. We've got a backup flight plan in the drone, so if that happens, it automatically starts flying a pre-programmed route to come home. Okay, and eventually you'll pick it up because it comes back into the local area and you pick it up on the line of sight transmission. But after 2 days and it hasn't shown up, you kind of figure something might have happened. So.
While I'm working my way around to whatever the next question is, a couple times you mentioned the acronym BDA. Can you define that, please?
Okay, Bomb Damage Assessment. And it's been in the news here recently with the strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities. Everybody's getting all upset about the BDA reports. The leaked early one that said, well, we're not really too sure, but it's a low confidence report. and General Kane did a really good job of explaining that we don't grade our results. Intel grades our results. So We provide them the video, they look at it, and they make the assessment. I don't say what a great job I did. Intel says what a great job I did. I can tell you, every bomb I watched hit the ground. Number one, they're 100% successful. They hit the ground every time. But every bomb I watched hit the ground, hit exactly the target they told me to watch. And sometimes it was just a bridge over a small river. And they said, we're going to blow up that bridge. Gone. So every bomb I saw in Iraq and Iran was on target.
So you said they weren't shot down. How about durability? You said they recovered pretty well, but any that you had that?
Well, they have recovered. They have recovered some crashed ones. Obviously, the one in the Black Sea went down to the bottom of the Black Sea, and they are concerned about the exploitation of the equipment on the drone, because the cameras are just absolutely incredible. When we were flying in Poland, what I said is a $25 million aircraft, we were carrying an electronic snoop pod that was worth more than the aircraft. Okay, so that's how much listening we were doing. But yeah, there's sensitive stuff on there they definitely don't want them to get a hold of.
And you had said at one point you were stacked 500 feet apart.
I'm sorry?
You said at one point you were stacked 500 feet apart, a bunch of drones coming in. And these aren't all just U.S.
Well, we were stacked from 20,000 to 35,000 feet. And in Iraq, in addition to paying attention to airstrikes, we had one of the chat rooms was the fire control coordinator. And anytime the Army was going to fire artillery, they would send us a message and say, okay, here's the fire point, here's the fan, stay out of that fan up to 18,000 feet. So I had to plot that fan on my chart and avoid it. So needless to say, I like to operate above 18,000 feet anytime I could. Then I didn't have to worry about the artillery. But I still had to worry about the airstrikes, because the B-2s would come through, and the B-1s, and they would drop their ordnance from like 18,000 or 20,000 feet. And again, it was a cone, but instead of being a fan going out, it was a cone coming down. So I had to stay out of that cone up to whatever their altitude was. And that's how we deconflicted that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
So how about other countries' equipment, drones?
Well,
are you deconflicting with them all the time?
There was a lot of, most of the drones, another drone was Scan Eagle, which was made by a company here in Simi Valley. My son was flying that at the time, and he was with the SEAL team in Iraq. And then there were not a lot of foreign drones, but of other militaries, but there were other drones that were being flown by the Iranians that were supplied by Iran.
And last, how low? You keep talking thousands and thousands of feet. How low would you ever run a mission?
How low were the what?
How low? What was the lowest elevation you would run at?
Oh, well, like I said, when we were monitoring the ship that was outside south of the Gulf of Oman, they wanted us to go down low to get better resolution. And I had to tell them, I said, look, I can do that, but you drastically cut into my time because the fuel consumption goes up and I'll have to go home earlier. But that was the one time I know that the feed from our drone was going at least to the Pentagon, and I heard that it got relayed on up to the White House. So at that time, I think it got down to 12,000 feet. So.
You said it was a turboprop engine, so it's going to be more fuel efficient at higher altitudes.
Yeah, a lot better fuel consumption rates at higher. The higher you go, the better you are.
Plus your sensors, the longer the line of sight, they have a bigger footprint on the ground.
Soaking up the electrons, you get better reception, but again, the higher you go, the less resolution you got on the video.
So you're talking about the resolution of cameras. Do you know the resolution of those, or is that like?
Well, let me put it this way. One time we were told to monitor a Toyota pickup truck that had the passenger side mirror missing. Okay? So that's, we could follow him without any trouble at all. You could monitor individuals. What we would monitor, they'd tell us to monitor a command post. It was a known command post. And we'd watch people come and go. And if they'd see somebody come that they'd never seen before, they'd say, follow that person home because we want to see where they live. And so we would follow that person and find out where they were operating out of. But we find IED manufacturing locations and all kinds of stuff like that.
When you were at a base that had a runway and the planes were right there, did the pilot use the same office that you were in, or do they have a separate office?
Oh no, it's the same van. We're in the, so that one of the things you have to do when you pre-flight the aircraft in the van is you program the C-band frequencies and the satellite frequencies. Okay, and so as soon as you take off, you just simply turn off the C-band and the satellite picks it up. Okay, and then when it's time to swap out, pilot gets out of his chair, I get in it, sensor gets out of his chair, and we generally did not swap out both seats at the same time. We swapped them out. When I was flying with the Marines, it was a Marine contract. They wanted to fly the drone as well because they're getting ready to acquire it. So our requirement was there had to be at least one General Atomics person in one of the seats. So if a Marine was the pilot, then we had a General Atomics sensor. If the Marine was a sensor, we had a General Atomics pilot. If the Marine was a pilot flying, I was in the jump seat watching.
Hi. I'm just wondering, military-specific side, what other sort of interesting things have you seen sort of on the way there or on the way back that?
I'm talking now what?
Yeah, what kind of, fun and interesting things may you have observed while flying these drones, aside from the military-specific?
Well, it was interesting. We had, while I was flying in Poland, we had a guard unit here in the States that wanted to train on our drones. So we would get the drone into the exercise area, hand the drone off to them, and they would fly the exercise, and then they'd hand the drone back to us. Other than that, again, the fact to me that every other country in the world could handle drone operations without a problem, and the FAA just gets so tilted over it, it's ridiculous. But again, necessity sometimes dictates that you learn to do stuff, and that's what they did. They were very, very adaptive for drone ops.
Which was your best airplane, the F4 or the F-15?
F-15's my sweetheart. Now, having said that, I love the F-4 dearly. I mean, 232 combat missions and not a scratch. Okay, came home every time. But yeah, when first time I flew the F-15, I just, oh, that's great. Yeah.
Okay, so a reminder, Rich is going to come up and sign some books if you wish to buy one. And Rich, thank you very much.
You're welcome.